Imagine going to bed tonight, you pull up your blanket, scroll on your phone for 40 minutes watching videos of dogs failing to catch frisbees. Eventually, after 3 random trips to the kitchen for no reason, you drift off. Simple, comfortable, honestly, kind of perfect, beautiful. Now, imagine doing all of that without a blanket, without a phone, minus the bed, minus the walls, minus the kitchen, literally minus everything. Instead, you are sitting in a dark forest wrapped in animal skins, listening to some huge creature rustling the bushes 20 feet away from you. That was Tuesday for our ancestors. And here is the thing that nobody really asks. What did they actually do when night fell, once the sun went down, when the world went pitch black, when wild predators started waking up, when your only weapon was a sharp rock and a tiny shred of optimism? What was the plan? Did they even sleep? Stay awake? Did they just huddle there staring into the void, constantly expecting the worst? Just like a prehistoric guy just waiting for some new IKEA furniture to arrive, because we spend a third of our entire lives sleeping, yet we rarely stop to wonder how incredibly different that experience was for 99% of history. The answer, as it turns out, is so much stranger, way more fascinating, and honestly, far more human than you would ever guess. Let us go way back, before we ever tamed fire, before we had tools worth bragging about, before there was anything resembling civilization. Early humans faced with a very simple, highly terrifying problem. Half of every day was spent in total darkness. Not like streetlights, shining annoyingly bright through your bedroom window. Not like you forgot to juice up my phone, and now I can't find the bathroom. Total, absolute, crushing, existential darkness. The kind where you wave your hand right in front of your face and see absolutely nothing. The kind where every snap twig instantly becomes a potential tragedy. And inside that darkness, beasts hunted, lions, hyenas, leopards, and saber-toothed cats. Almost all major predators of the ancient world were crepuscular or nocturnal. They are most active at dawn, dusk, or during the night. Which means that when the sun set, our ancient ancestors went from being the top hunters to suddenly finding themselves as a highly nutritious snack option for some beast with much better night vision. No need for a weather app to know the forecast. The outlook was dark with a massive chance of being eaten. So, what did we do? We grouped up. We found somewhere high, somewhere secure, somewhere defensible. We used the landscape itself as protection. Caves became prime real estate, not because early humans had some deep fondness for cold stone walls and zero natural light, but because a deep cave is a space with only one entrance. We can put our backs to the rock. We know exactly which direction the danger is approaching from. It was basically the first home security system, and it worked remarkably well. You could not swipe a key card to get inside, but then again, leopards cannot swipe key cards either. Groups huddled together in these spaces, close enough to share body heat, near enough to hear each other breathe, close enough that if something crept in the night, you'd know instantly. It wasn't cozy in our modern sense, but there was a certain kind of safety in numbers that went far beyond simple defense. Sleeping near other people meant someone was always a light sleeper. Someone always stirred. Someone was always accidentally or intentionally keeping watch for the group. Then, about 400,000 years ago, everything changed. Fire. The moment our ancestors tamed those wild flames, the entire dynamic of the night completely shifted. Fire does something almost magical for our survival. Perspective. Sure, it keeps you warm and cooks food, which dramatically boosts your nutrition. But far more important than all of that, it creates a boundary. A glowing circle, a wall between you and the darkness. It is purely psychological, and yet it feels incredibly real. Most big predators avoid the firelight, not because the flames physically block them, but because they evolved to hunt in pitch black and open. Fire is a bizarre, confusing disruption. Sitting by those embers, you were safe from wild beasts, not through strength or speed, but through pure light. But here is the truly fascinating part we rarely discuss. Fire did not simply protect our ancestors from wild beasts. It completely redefined what human beings are. Just think about gathering around a fire. You can't really do anything productive in the modern sense. No reading, no writing, no sending passive-aggressive emails to your boss. What you can do is sit, look at each other, and actually be fully present, in the truest sense of the word, with those sitting beside you. Scientists who study modern indigenous hunter-gatherer groups, like the Ruhonzi of the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa, or the Hadza of researchers in Tanzania, found something absolutely stunning. Daytime talk in these groups is mostly practical. Who is hunting where? What needs gathered? Just social coordination, logistics. The ancient equivalent of a Monday morning staff meeting. But nighttime conversation, completely huddled around the night fire. People spin tales, long, detailed, emotionally rich, morally complex stories, sagas about ancestors, tales of the world's creation, narratives about what makes someone brave, to be generous, a person worth knowing. Roughly 80% of evening fire chats in hunter-gatherer groups is just storytelling, compared to only 6% during day. Let that sink in. Daytime is logistics, nighttime brings stories. Every single night for tens of thousands of years, our ancestors sat around fires, narrating the world to one another. They did exactly what we do on streaming services, what we do with novels, or even with every movie ever made. They wanted to make sense of existence through narratives, through characters, conflict, and consequence. That campfire was their cinema. The storyteller was the screen. This matters so much more because those stories are how culture passes itself. It is how values get passed down, how history survives, and how identity builds across generations, without writing, books, or any external storage systems at all. Nighttime tales around the fire were the hard drive of our civilization. Fire did not just save us from predators. It was probably the single biggest catalyst for our evolution, how we shaped language, empathy, our shared memory, and deep social bonds across all of human history. Journey. Just sitting around campfires at night, sharing stories with each other might be the reason we turned into the species, capable of imagining things that do not exist. Yet, not bad for ancestors wrapped in animal skins. Now, let us talk sleep, because here is where things get really bizarre. This is the part that might completely change how you feel about waking at 3 a.m. Most of us just assume that the natural, healthy way you are supposed to sleep is 8 solid hours, straight through the night, in one single block. So if you wake at 3 a.m. and cannot drift back off, you panic. Something must be wrong. You start Googling symptoms. You spiral straight down a webbed rabbit hole. By 4 a.m., you have diagnosed yourself with multiple sleeping disorders and some rare nutrient deficiencies. Here is the shocker. That entire belief might be completely wrong historically. There is a historian named Roger E. who spent decades digging through thousands of ancient documents, personal diaries, old medical texts, court files, literature, and old journals. What he discovered was absolutely stunning. For most of human history, going back to medieval times and likely even much further, our ancestors did not sleep in one chunk. They had two. It was split into first and second sleep. You would head to bed a few hours after twilight. You slept for about 3 or 4 hours. Then you would wake up naturally, not panicking, not in distress, just waking up calmly, the way you might surface from a cozy daydream. And you'd stay awake for an hour, maybe even 2. Then, you'd drift right back to sleep until morning. This is not some wild fringe theory. It is documented across cultures, spanning continents and over centuries. With incredible consistency, mentions of first sleep and second sleep pop up in ancient texts going back to Homer's Odyssey. Ancient Roman writers mentioned it as a matter of fact, just like we mention breakfast. Medieval writing is packed with it. A French doctor in the 16th century even recommended that couples make babies during the wakeful gap between sleeps because partners were naturally more relaxed and calm during that window. Medieval courts logged it. Household records. No chores done between those two sleeps is totally normal. Boring household events. The watch in the night. Surely you've heard that in old texts, in the Bible, and countless historical documents. We usually assume it means guards on a wall keeping military watch. And sometimes it did, but quite often it just meant the quiet gap between those sleeps when regular folks were wide awake, in the dark. So what did people do during this waking window right in the middle of the night? Everything. They prayed, across many different faiths. Those quiet hours, between midnight and sunrise were seen as the most sacred time for connecting with the divine. When the world was still and you felt closest to something greater, they thought about their dreams, which were taken far more seriously as actual, meaningful messages than we do today. They had sex. Actually, this was seen as an ideal time for it, since your body was warm and relaxed, with absolutely nowhere else to be. They tended fires, tossing on logs to stay warm through the chilly night. Farmers checked their animals. Mothers nursed their babies. Some folks in towns and cities would visit neighbors. Not weird midnight vibe, just folks who knew each other, walking through dark streets between those to sleeps, like it was completely normal because it was. It was not insomnia. It wasn't a disorder or a brain malfunction, just the night doing what it does, drifting in phases just like it always did. The reason this natural pattern collapsed? Almost certainly artificial light. The moment we could flood rooms late into the evening with gas lamps, and then electricity, we pushed our bedtime later and later. Our total sleep window shrinks. That natural gap between our first and second sleep vanished inside one single solid block. And now, waking up in the middle of night feels wrong. It feels like something is completely wrong with you. Instead of realizing it is an ancient, evolutionary rhythm doing its job exactly as nature intended. So, if you wake up at 3 a.m., feeling totally calm and surprisingly clear-headed, lying there in the quiet thinking about your life for an hour before drifting calmly back off to sleep, congratulations, you are not broken. You are not anxious. You are not developing a disorder. You are, in the most literal way, prehistoric. Your biology remembered something we were never meant to forget. Let's go. Let's go even further back, because the deeper you look at how our ancestors actually slept, the more mind-blowing it gets. Early Homo sapiens and their hominid ancestors obviously did not have mattresses, but they also did not sleep the way we usually imagine, just flopping onto the cold dirt, hoping for the best. The truth is actually much more sophisticated. Ancient evidence from South African cave sites, specifically Border Cave in KwaZulu-Natal, suggests that 200,000 years ago, humans were building custom sleeping spots, not furniture, but carefully hand-picked layers of grass, leafy branches, and specific wild plants. Here is the detail that makes it truly wild. Underneath those layers, scientists discovered ash. Not random leftovers from a campfire, but ash carefully spread right under the bedding. Why? Because ash naturally repels nasty insects, ticks, mites, and fleas, the exact things that bite you and make you miserable while spreading nasty diseases. Someone 200,000 years back realized that if you put a layer of ash under your bed, the bugs stay away. Talk about doing pest control before the concept was even invented. They were literally using chemistry before knowing what it even meant. Think about that for a second. Someone woke up itchy, saw the ash from last night's fire, and made the connection, tested it, proved it worked, then shared it with the tribe. That is pure science. The scientific method alive inside a prehistoric brain solved a basic human problem, getting a comfortable night's sleep. These were not cavemen barely surviving. These were active designers of their rest, solving survival problems with what they had, testing solutions, and making life getting noticeably better through every day, watching and tweaking things. In freezing regions like prehistoric Europe or Central Asia during Ice Age winters, the biggest threat shifted from bugs to cold. Ice Age winter temperatures could easily plummet to levels that would freeze an unprepared person within hours. Their fix was sleeping together, groups huddled up close, sharing body heat like a human living insulation system. This was more than social. It was pure thermal physics. More bodies in a small space meant warmer air, which meant survival. And certain people in these groups were naturally lighter sleepers, waking up easily, always ready to react. Scientists think this mix of deep and light sleepers was actually an evolutionary trick. A group where everyone slept like a log would be a group that got eaten, but a tribe with a mix of sleep depths had, basically, built-in guards on duty, without anyone needing to suffer through a miserable night watch. Evolution works smart like that. Now, here is the wild part that really puts it into perspective, because nighttime was not just about sleep and staying alive. For almost every single ancient culture on Earth, the dark was the most spiritually active time in their whole cycle of life. And that makes perfect, natural sense. Think about it. The sun, which made the world bright, warm, and alive, died every single evening, sinking below the horizon. In the beliefs of endless ancient tribes, it literally dropped into a terrifying underworld to fight its way back. Every sunrise was a triumph. Every dark night was a test. The ancient Maya created massive calendar systems based on tracking stars and planets, which only appeared in the dark. Ancient cities like Chichen Itza, Uxmal, Palenque were built to align directly with precise star paths and cosmic movements. The observatory at Chichen Itza was engineered to track Venus with unbelievable precision. Venus, only appearing at sunrise and sunset, belonged to the god Quetzalcoatl and ruled over all choices of war. The night sky wasn't wallpaper. It was an active political and military intelligence system. Maya priests performed crucial ceremonies in the dead of night, making sacrifices to make sure the sun would finish its dangerous trek through the underworld and rise again. For us, this just sounds like mythology. For them, it was actually routine grid maintenance. The sun kept rising, so the rituals obviously worked. Correlation equaled causation, and those priests were vital essential workers. In ancient Mesopotamia, the rising civilizations of Sumer, Babylon, and Assyria, a highly trained class of scholar priests called Baru worked tirelessly to scan the night sky for signs. Every strange sky event was a message. A comet meant trouble. A lunar eclipse spelled doom specifically for the king. The wandering planets told them when to go to war, plant crops, or negotiate treaties. This wasn't blind superstition in the way we think. It was a deeply serious effort to find patterns in natural events and use them to make smarter choices. Sure, their method was flawed, but the drive was pure science. Those Polynesian navigators pulled off something that, once you grasp it, is practically impossible to believe. Without navigation gear, with no compass, no sextant, and no GPS, with zero charts, they navigated the largest ocean on Earth, crossing thousands of miles across open water in wooden outrigger canoes, pinpointing tiny islands that are mere dots in an oceanic expanse larger than all of Earth's land combined. How did they manage? Primarily at night. Think about that. They memorized rising and setting points of hundreds of different stars for various times of year, different seasons, and different latitudes. They even read ocean swells. Deep swells roll in from different directions, and you literally feel them in your body, even when you cannot see their source. They tracked how birds behaved, knowing they fly toward land at dusk. They read cloud shapes that usually gather over islands. They felt the water temperature with their own hands and feet. The starry sky was their navigation system, and it was far more advanced in many ways than anything we used before GPS. These were people who turned darkness into pure expertise, making the night a deep library of data they could read with ease. Ready for another detail that hits hard when people hear it. Iron Age smiths in what is modern Zimbabwe, working between 200 and 1900, Common Era, actively chose to fire their forges at night, not for traditional reasons, not randomly, but because during the day, sunlight washes out the incredibly subtle color shifts in hot iron that show you its exact temperature. When forging iron, color is everything. Red heat, bright orange, yellow, white. Every stage meaning something crucial about the metal's condition, status, and what you can do with it. At night, you could spot those colors with absolute clarity against the dark. They treated the darkness like a precision tool. In ancient Pakistan, at Mohenjo-Daro, one of the first real urban civilizations over 4,000 years old, sanitation workers gathered up waste. Strictly at night, the city used a highly advanced drainage system, but hauling away the human waste was done in total darkness for obvious reasons. Mainly everyone's overall quality of life. Think about it, they had real logistics, smart scheduling, and they basically ran actual night shifts. In Bronze Age Oman, farmers watered their fields at night to stop evaporation loss. A brilliant, simple water-saving hack for such a dry climate, discovered through pure observation and logic. In freezing northern Europe, the Vikings burned fish oil and whale fat lamps to illuminate their lawn houses during those brutal winter nights, which in Scandinavia can last 18 to 20 hours. They didn't surrender to darkness. They improved their light sources and kept working, kept talking, kept living through the darkness. Let's connect all these dots because there is a bigger point here. Not just a bunch of neat facts. When we ask what early humans did at night, we picture them small and terrified. Families huddled on rocks waiting passively for sunrise, enduring the dark instead of actually living in it. Night was just an empty gap between days, when absolutely nothing happened and nothing mattered. But that is totally wrong. The night was actually when we told stories that shaped our culture, and when we slept into natural phases, and waking up at midnight just to think, to pray, and truly connect, when they held each other warm against freezing cold that would otherwise kill them. When priests read the night sky for messages from above. When ancient navigators crossed the Pacific using nothing but stars, waves, and deep instinct. When blacksmiths used darkness to judge the metal. When farmers watered their crops by moonlight. When the Maya made offerings to pull the sun back from the underworld. And the sun, every single morning, kept its side of the bargain. The night wasn't empty. It was brimming with life. A different world, governed by different rules, demanding unique skills, bringing a totally different meaning. But it was a reality that humans had mapped, conquered, and made completely their own over hundreds of thousands of years. Then we traded almost all of it for electric light, which, let's be honest, was totally worth it. Indoor plumbing, antibiotics, the internet, and sliced cheese. Modern living has some massive TRKS, but we definitely lost something in how we completely erased the boundary between day and night. How utterly we have conquered the dark. How few of us actually look at the sky above us, or understand the natural rhythms of our own bodies when left alone. We lost the campfire circle, whispered stories in the deep dark, that natural Bifasic sleep, with its calm, clear-headed middle hours, the stars as our map, our calendar, our sacred guide. Simply waking up in the dead of night, with nothing to do but exist. So, next time you wake up at 3 a.m. and lie there completely alert, your thoughts drifting smoothly through your mind like water, don't panic, and don't grab your phone. Avoid that midnight anxiety spiral. Just rest there in the quiet dark for a moment. Let your mind wander where it wants. Wake up just like your ancestors did. Calm, completely aware, in the middle of a night that is truly yours. You are not malfunctioning. You are remembering.